Other people dealing with pornography, be it adults, teenagers, young married couples, old married couples, they must be dealing with their own issues because we've touched on the effects it can have.
Some men do it secretly, so where the women simply don't know what's going on, but they sort of do because it'll change the way they all want to have sex, and they sort of think what is going on, and because of today's climate, they're not stupid. Women will say, I think my husband's looking at porn, and there are other times where they just simply don't know. But if a woman does know, they might do two things. They might confront the husband, or they might just live with the fact and think, well, and this is a typical answer, it's just a boy thing. When a man realises that he's done the wrong thing, see, if you think of this, right? If you don't think you're doing the wrong thing and your wife does, and she feels like you're being unfaithful, then there's going to be problems in the household. But if the husband thinks that he's doing the wrong thing, that's the first step to recovering a marriage, or the first step to fixing a marriage. They have to realise they're doing something wrong. If they don't realise they're doing something wrong, but the other person thinks they're doing something wrong, well, what do you do? But if the wife disagrees with it and the husband does, and we're just picking on the men for a second, and he's repentant, and that means just turning 180 degrees, he says, what, it's wrong, I need to stop. That's the beginning. But then he might see it's wrong and says, what, I need to fix myself, so I'm going to become accountable. I'm going to stop straight away. I'm going to become accountable. I'm going to remove all the material. I'm going to put filters. That's the beginning stage of his recovery. But what needs to go along with is the wife's forgiveness and her mercy involved in that. Because if she is unforgiving, then it doesn't matter how repentant he is. Sure, he can move on and he can not do it because he knows it's wrong. But then the marriage is over anyway because she's unforgiving. So it takes a forgiving wife or a forgiving partner. But the partner then has to believe that you are truly repentant, that you really have changed, and that I can really trust you again. And what's typical is that if there isn't that trust and it's in the back of her head all the time, that's going to create a problem. So as much as he's repentant and as much as he's stopped looking at it, the wife might always be suspicious, and that's going to cause other issues. So you can see how complex this issue is. You need two parties, one that's forgiving and shows mercy and realises that human beings make mistakes, and another person that changes. And I need to change for the right things. If I was to say pornography is bad, I'm not going to look at it anymore because I might lose my marriage, forget it. That's totally useless, because you're just seeing how it'll affect you. You follow what I mean? You're saying it's going to affect me because I won't have a marriage and I won't have a partner, and who's going to cook for me, who's going to provide for me or whatever. That's a bit male chauvinist, but you know what I mean? Like, who's going to do all these things for me if I don't have a marriage? That's not the right reason. You have to realise that pornography is wrong. That's true repentance. Seeing how it's going to affect your life is not true repentance. That's just self-preservation. Do you follow what I'm saying? Firstly, a wife needs to forgive, and there has to be open dialogue, there has to be open communication. One of the big problems today is, and maybe I'm being too Christian here, but I think that as Christians, we don't leave a foothold for the devil. We leave no room for the enemy, outside people to come in. It could be the devil, or it could be just people. Never speak to your secretary about the issues that you're having at home with your wife. That's putting a foothold. Do you follow what I mean? Don't get with your best mate and start rattling on how bad your wife is, or she does this or doesn't. Do you know what I mean? That's just being unfaithful. Once you set those boundaries, your partner is, you've cleaved together, you've become one. That means that you connect on a spiritual and emotional level where you communicate with your partner. So that means I'll sit down with Tracy, or Tracy will sit me down and say, you know what, I'm not happy with this. That's the way, but if we hold on to it, it creates this wedge. So with the issues with pornography, or no matter what it is, you've got to communicate. It's forever. If you have an attitude of marriage is forever, and that's your attitude, and I'm going to fix it no matter what, you will be forced to communicate. Otherwise, you're going to be miserable. So you haven't got a choice. You've got to sit down and say, you know what? And we did that recently. We sat down together. Tracy said some of the things that she's angry with me, or she wants me to change, and I did the same thing with her. Now, we've been married 29 years. It doesn't end. It goes on forever. But it takes two people. I went into a family situation where I was invited by a woman from the school that I used to minister to, and I went in and I spoke to the child who was 16 that was looking at porn, and during the conversation I said, "Where did you get the porn from?" And he said, "Through my father." And I looked up and saw the father, and the father goes, "Yeah, we've dealt with it, but I don't look at porn anymore." But you could see that as a family, and I would say the spiritual head at that particular time was definitely the wife. She had communicated with her husband. It had become a joint thing where they'd all sat down and communicated about the issues they're having in their home with pornography. And only because of that, the change came. And I think that's one of the big downfalls. If you look at divorce today, number one is infidelity, number two is incompatibility, and number three is communication. We need to communicate, and I think that's the secret. When either a male or female is dealing, a wife's looking at porn, doesn't matter. When you need to deal with it, two people need to agree that it's wrong to make it happen. And then two people need to communicate, and then trust has to be built. But what I know is that you need that trust with it. Otherwise, if you hold on to, and you certainly can't bring up the past. You know how in an argument, and you'll find this out when you get married, you'll do something wrong, or it could be with a girlfriend or boyfriend, but you do something wrong and they bring up your past. Well, hold it, I always go, well, the stone's been rolled away. It's a Christian song. God's forgiven me, so why would you bring it up? It's happened in the past, you know what I mean? It can be a cop-out sometimes, but why bring up things that you've done in the past? It's only going to fester up things. Deal with the issue. It's like when two people argue. I love this. I refuse to get angry when I argue, disagree with, I just won't do it. Think about it. You're screaming at your kids. Does anything gain? Do they ever hear what you're saying? It's impossible. It's better to write them a letter when you're quiet and emotionally settled, so you can write them a good letter instead of one that's just out of emotion. Or you sit down with them at another time and communicate with them. Arguments are pointless if you're screaming. You're better off communicating like two adults, sitting down and saying, look, this is how I feel. This is how you make me feel. And dealing with that issue that way and being open. Otherwise, it simply is not going to work,